Good afternoon, everybody. It is Melissa Johnson speaking. Thank you for joining me. I'm, of course, the Principal Psychologist and the Director at Thriving Mind Psychology Clinic, located here on the Sunshine Coast. We had one sunny day and we are now back to overcast and rainy day, which I'm not really enjoying. I'm a little bit over it. Hello to my live viewer, and thank you for joining. Okay, so as promised, today I am talking about multitasking. And I'm doing this, let me just check the volume as usual, I forgot. I thought that I might talk about this topic today because if you have seen my blog yesterday, so blog 20, it was entitled Move, 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 you would have seen my effort at multitasking. So what I was doing is I was trying to vlog live while walking, so trying to get my exercise in. So with one hand I was also pushing the pram and the other hand I was holding a selfie stick with the phone. And not too long into that vlog, it resulted in me nearly losing my selfie stick and my phone, which was attached to it, into the lake where I was walking by. So that was a bit of an example of multitasking gone wrong. I'm sure it could have been a lot worse. It wasn't too bad. I'm sure it was a laugh for everybody watching. But it sort of prompted me to have a talk about multitasking. So what is multitasking? Well, essentially it's when we're performing more than one task at any one time. And look, we all do this and probably we do it more often than we realize. So for example, we might be taking a phone call while typing an email, or we might be trying to read a book while we're watching TV or study while we're watching TV. These are all examples of multitasking. And often we believe that when we're multitasking, we're dividing our attention amongst those tasks. And that's actually not the case. Our brain has a very finite ability to attend and to concentrate on a task. So what that means is it can really only focus on one, maybe two, depending how good you are at it or how automatic it is for you. But it really is only very good at focusing on one task at any one time. So when we're trying to do more than one thing, what actually happens is our brain starts task shifting. So it will shift from the focusing on one task to the next. And it will do that backwards and forwards quite quickly. So whether it's while we're reading that email and, talking on the phone, or whether we're studying while watching TV, or a good example, driving while speaking. So even though the phone might be on hands-free, we're still driving and we're still speaking to somebody on the phone. That's a perfect example of multitasking. And what's actually happening is our brain is switching from one task to the other, backwards and forwards really quite quickly. So ultimately what that means is we're actually pretty crap at it. There's lots of research. Hi Tess, thank you for joining me. Hope you're having a lovely Saturday. Talking about multitasking after nearly falling or dropping my phone into the lake yesterday while vlogging and multitasking all at the same time. Didn't go so well. So essentially, multitasking is shifting gears, changing attention from one task to the other and back again really quite quickly. And so what that means is there's lots of research into multitasking, and it basically says that we're not very efficient and it's not very effective, which kind of makes sense when you're thinking about it, right? So if you're trying to speak on the phone and write an email at the same time, your mind needs to constantly shift from writing that email to talking on the phone, to writing that email to talking on the phone. Now, each time we shift gears or shift attention, that takes time. So it's actually reducing how efficient we are at that task. Not only that, but what it means is we're not fully in the moment or fully present or focused on that one task because we're constantly having to shift backwards and forwards. And then it takes us a little bit of time to get back into what it was that we were trying to achieve. Now, I am very, very guilty of doing this all the time. I constantly have half-done jobs complete around my house and at work. Although I have a to-do list, I will often be typing an email at work and then thinking, oh, I must make that phone call. And then I'll quickly stop and I'll pick up the phone and make that phone call. What that means is I'm actually probably taking more time to do both tasks long term than what I would have if I had just paid attention, finished that email, and then shift my focus over to making the phone call. I didn't really have to try and do two things at once. It was just that I was, trying to juggle too many things and didn't really think about it, just jumped into it. So I have a question, and it's my brother asking me whether males and females respond differently to multitasking. I will talk about that another time, thank you, Cameron, and I suspect that you're trying to prove that you're far better at multitasking than I am. So we shall talk about that another day. But essentially, no, the brain is pretty much the same across male and female in terms of its ability to attend to one thing at once. Of course, when we're quite automatic, like something like breathing and blinking and even walking is okay because, it's fairly automatic, so it doesn't take a lot of attention. So we can do other things when we're doing that. So thank you for that question. Okay, so we're not very efficient, we're not very effective. And when we think about it, this makes sense. Too much jumping backwards and forwards takes too long to get into it, and it takes time for our mind to shift gears. Now, why are we doing this? If we know we're not that effective at it, why are we doing it? And I can think of three main reasons. I think there's probably more, but I'm just going to talk about three. The first one is, it's essential. If you are a parent, or if you've ever had a child or been around a child, particularly a newborn child, you very quickly learn that multitasking is the only way sometimes to get anything done. So I know when I had my first child, I very quickly learned how to wash up one-handed while I was carrying a baby in the other hand, or put a load of washing on one-handed, cook dinner one-handed, vacuum one-handed. There's lots of things that you have to do one-handed, but also multitasking when you have children. And it becomes essential because sometimes if you don't do it, then nothing's ever going to get done. Of course, what it does mean is sometimes it doesn't get done as well as it would be if you are able to dedicate your full attention to it, but sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. So multitasking isn't necessarily always a bad thing. Sometimes it's quite essential, like parenting. My next reason why I think we multitask a lot is because I think it's just so accessible. So when we have a look at social media, but also have a look at the devices and the technology that we have, going back, maybe 15, probably not even 20 years, you might remember that phones were actually attached to the wall. We couldn't walk around and talk on the phone. There's certainly no texting, okay? You couldn't really do much while you were talking on the phone because you were stuck in a very close vicinity to the wall. And sometimes you didn't dare try and wash up while you were talking on the phone because most of the time that little bungee cord flicked the phone into the water, which wasn't a great outcome, which we never told Mum about. So because of that technology, you think of our computers back, 10, 15 years ago, they weren't these little thin laptops that we could sit on the couch with and watch TV while doing our work. They're these massive big boxes that we had to sit at the desk with. We didn't really have the choice. So I think, the accessibility with devices, with social media, Facebook, always jumping on there, constantly having a look at your feed and your Facebook messages while you're doing something else creates this multitasking when sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing it. The third reason I think we do it, and I often wonder, do we glamorize multitasking a bit too much? So often I know I'm guilty of it. We might look at other people and think, wow, look at them, they're amazing, look at everything they're doing at once, they've got home life, work life, they've got this going, they're cooking dinner, they look perfect, they're doing this, their kids are wonderful, they behave, their house is clean, wow, they're amazing. Of course that's probably not the case, but we often can glamorize it or look at other people and think how amazing they are because that's what they're doing, they're multitasking. Or often, in a job interview, a boss might say, okay, well, how are your multitasking skills? And we, of course, say they're wonderful. So I think sometimes it is glamorized a little bit and almost we expect ourselves to be able to do it. Or we have this expectation about how wonderful it is to be able to multitask, which is what I was doing yesterday and it didn't turn out very well. So that's my sort of three reasons. I'm sure there's a lot more while we multitask, but yes, it's essential. Yes, it's just available. It's too easy. And also sometimes I think it's something we aspire to and maybe we shouldn't. Maybe it's not always that necessary. So that brings me to my last sort of points of multitasking. I guess, as I said, it is essential at times. We have to do these things. But perhaps I could invite you to maybe think about times when is it really necessary to try and talk on the phone and to write an email at the same time. Is it really necessary to drive the car while taking that phone call, hands-free of course? And sometimes we do it because we actually think it's going to get done quickly. or quicker than what it would if we hadn't. And I was actually reading some research, and it did some research on people driving a car to a destination whilst talking on Bluetooth. And what they found was the people driving the car actually got there slower than the people driving the car who were not doing anything else and just attending to driving. And I can relate to this. There's so many times that I've been talking on the phone while driving, hands-free of course, and I have missed my turn off, or I have turned in the wrong place and I've had to go around, turn, come back. So it's taken me far more time, and it would have been easy just to make the phone call, then get in the car and go. So I'd encourage you to have a think about, is it really necessary to be doing so many things at once? And a good way to sort of try and pull that back is blocking. So have a look at doing all your bills at once, or then attending to all your emails and then moving on to the next task. Trying to block things into sections that you just focus on at that point in time, and then consciously shift your focus to that next task. The other way to do it might be just putting a bit of a timeline on it. So you might be in the middle of time writing an email and you have this thought of, I need to make that phone call. Well, perhaps putting a timeline on it and say, right, I'm going to dedicate my attention for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes on my emails, and then I'll move on to phone calls. So that takes a little bit more conscious effort, and sometimes it involves being a little bit more mindful. And I haven't spoken about mindfulness yet, but I will in future vlogs. But essentially it's attending to that one thing, the present, the here and now, and pretty much that's it in that time. So that is my vlog about multitasking. It's not all doom and gloom. Sometimes, like I said, it is essential. Yesterday, it didn't go that great, but it wasn't the end of the world. It got done in the end. I got my vlog done, I got my exercise in, my child didn't interrupt. So actually it wasn't too bad. It could have been much worse. And if you're happy with having imperfect action, then that's okay too. I'm not saying you have to have things done perfectly and attend to everything perfectly. That's not reality. But just sometimes have a think about, can you maybe do one thing and then the next thing, rather than trying to do two things at once. Thank you all to my lovely live viewers. Thank you for the questions. Putting me on the spot. That's my brother. And thank you, Tess, for listening in. I hope you are all having a wonderful Saturday. I shall come to you tomorrow with another topic. Thank you very much. Bye for now.